I was born in the rain on the Poncha train underneath the Louisiana moon. Don't mind the strain of a hurricane, they come around every June. The high black water, devil's daughter, she's hard, she's cold, and she's mean.
General, thank you so much for making the time for us today. Big questions that we have that can only be answered by someone with your pedigree. Yeah. Where is the American military as Americans are suffering and dying? I'll preface this by saying our sources on the ground tell us that there are hundreds of bodies, American bodies, still buried in mudslides, and thousands of Americans that could potentially perish still in this storm. Where is the American military?
Yeah. So a couple of things that I want to cover. And Nick Sortor is unbelievable. And being on the ground there and doing what he's doing, I mean, talk about courage. So let me take it to the big picture first, because and then I will take it down to North Carolina and what should be done, what should immediately be done, and we're already a week too late. So big picture, we have over 100 counties, probably around 150 counties from Appalachia, Florida, all the way up to the Appalachian Mountains of Western North Carolina. So probably looking at 150 counties, in various states that are in a complete disaster zone. And so this is a federal emergency of epic proportions, of biblical proportions, that the federal government has been totally absent. Okay. I mean, absent. And I have folks that I'm working with right now, and I'll talk a little bit about what we did in North Carolina, what's going on in North Carolina, because people out around the country are, frankly, some around the world are asking where they can help, but certainly people around the country. So the big picture is we got about at least 150 counties that are in a total disaster zone, from northern Florida all the way up to in parts of Tennessee and, of course, North Carolina. In North Carolina, there's over 1,000 dead that have been confirmed to me, with just the body bags that have been filled. There are insufficient numbers of body bags, so there are dead bodies lying aside, and this is mainly up in North Carolina, that is already pushing over 1,000. My guess is that by the time we look at all of what has happened, we're going to be probably somewhere around 2,000 or north of 2,000 dead people. There are still people caught up in the hills of North Carolina and eastern Tennessee that their towns were completely wiped out. They're totally isolated. Homes are gone. And one of the things I want people to understand is that one of the things that you consider for humanitarian disaster recovery and relief operations, one of the first things you look at is the terrain and the weather conditions that are impending, right? So at nighttime right now up in the mountains of North Carolina, I'm very familiar with this area. I've trained up in there. I've been up in there many times in my experiences in the military, especially at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I won't call it the other name, but Fort Bragg, North Carolina, which I will talk to in a second here with the potential deployment of other resources that the government has. So the weather conditions right now are wet. They are, because it's misty at nighttime, it rains at night. We're looking at weather temperatures that are in the low 30s. And in another week or two, certainly by the end of this month, we're going to start to see freezing conditions, possibly even an early snow in the mountains of North Carolina, where these people are still walking around with nothing. So because I want to talk about what types of resources need to be brought to bear and the things that I know that are being done. So the big picture is we're going to probably be north of 2,000 dead. We have at least 150 counties, maybe 200 counties from northern Florida all the way up into western North Carolina that are in this disaster zone. The federal government has done nothing. One other strategic component here, Benny, and for your audience, when they talk about FEMA's out of money or the federal government's out of money, first of all, it's our money. So never forget that, folks. Secondly, our government has disaster recovery response funds, and Congress, and now I'm talking directly to Speaker Johnson, right? Congress can reallocate funds. So funds that are being allocated overseas to some other crazy endeavor that we don't need to be part of, they can reallocate funds with one simple vote. And actually, it's the Speaker of the House that can do that. So I don't want people to go, well, FEMA's out of money, the government's out. No, first of all, it's our money. And the Speaker of the House has the authority to be able to reallocate from one line item to another line item, especially for disaster recovery in the United States of America. And the President of the United States can do it with a stroke. It doesn't even take a pen. It could just be direct these funds to go to that effort immediately. The second thing is the President of the United States has the full authority to call out and federalize the National Guard, okay? And we probably are looking at a division's worth of capabilities that we need. So an Army division's worth of capabilities. So that's roughly somewhere between 15 and 20,000 personnel from that we can get from the National Guard right now, with all of the logistics, all of the communications, all of the tonnage, all of the what they call mobile kitchen trailers. I mean, for food. I mean, we can do water purification. The little numbers that have been sent, I think it's 1,000 from the Fort Bragg area, and there's like another 500. This is just in North Carolina. We need a full mobilization right now, and I'm serious about this. If you sprinkled fairy dust on me today and put me in charge, we would have an entire active duty division, because the active duty division, more than the National Guard has to come in. They got to go through all kinds of processes. They don't respond as quickly. So the 82nd Airborne Division, which is a 3-hour drive from the Western Hills of North Carolina, not like, a day or two to get there. They have capabilities that can be there literally in 2 hours, 4 hours, 24 hours. And I'm talking about large packages of the full complement of everything that Nick was just talking about. I have representatives on the ground doing a couple of things. One, they're collecting the intel right now. They're getting an assessment of the area. And these are the guys that are telling me how many body bags they're out of, how many body bags they need. There's still areas that they have not gotten into. I mean, some of the stories that I was told in the last couple of days, these were fixed, and I'll tell you how they were fixed. So we had North Carolina Forestry Service helicopters at Hickory Airfield in North Carolina that were sitting idle for 5 days. And the pilots who know that part of the country like the back of their hands were so frustrated because they were directed basically, don't do anything. Okay. They would call up and go, hey, these guys are looking for help here, and we can help them. We know this area very well, because flying in the mountains with a helicopter is far more difficult than flying, along a beach, right? Because you're up at a higher altitude. So there's a lot of dynamics and technical issues here that people have to be aware of. So these guys were sitting idle. One phone call, and it was to the Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robinson. And I'm going to give him a lot of cred right now, because in that phone call, he told me that nobody was answering their phones from the governor's office of North Carolina. Nobody was answering their phones from his calls to the Department of Homeland Security, or he was calling up into the White House. So Mark took it on his own, went to the airfield yesterday afternoon and directed under his authority. And I don't know what that means. I don't know if he has that versus the governor, but he told those helicopters, and they said, thank you very much. And they put those helicopters into service. They were sitting there, Benny, for 5 days. So there's so many stories of incompetence and ineptitude and intentionality. FEMA has a small element on the ground, and people that are going up to it, there's no signs. So it's not like, hey, FEMA's here. We're here to help. We got supplies coming in. We got relief efforts going on. They were told, basically don't address anybody that comes up. If they come up, just tell them you're sitting tight and you're waiting on resources. This was this morning. This is this morning, a FEMA operation that's a little bit further away from Hickory, up in the greater Asheville area. So that's kind of some of the tactical picture. But we have the ability immediately, and I mean immediately, with the phone call by the President of the United States directing the National Command Authority, and that means the Department of Defense, the Secretary of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, and some of these other federal institutions to mobilize, and they should put it under the command and control of a military unit, because this is a military recovery and disaster relief operation. I've been part of many of these. This is a very simple operation, actually, and the military, because these are Americans, right? Our soldiers, and I have too many stories in the last couple of days of soldiers at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, taking leave because many of them live up there, or other guys know people up there. So they're taking their own leave to get out there and help out for a couple of days to just do some immediate operations, because they can't take that much leave, right? A couple of days, 7 days. And so units are letting them go. So low-level soldiers or our rank and file understand the urgency. They're watching this unravel, and they're looking at our government go and say and do nothing. I mean, nothing. This is so outrageous. We have, I mean, and what Nick was talking about, and you guys kind of touched on it in the end, you kind of say to yourself, why? And so, what are they doing? Right? And you have to say to yourself, $750, that's ridiculous. I mean, everybody knows. Everybody looks at this and goes, what the hell is going on? And what's going on is, and I said this very publicly this morning on my X post, I want people to understand when they say build back better, they need to destroy the entire system in order to build it back better in their image. And I mean that intentionally. I mean that precisely. These people are intent on destroying this country. So there are also stories. This just makes me sick. And good reporting from good people on the ground that I know of the looting and a lot of gunshot fire, a lot of gun fights up there to get rid of looters by some of the locals and by some of the recovery assets. There are also children that they're finding with ropes on their arms and their legs where they were tied to trees by their parents, and their parents are now dead. And the kids were able to get recovered. There are reports of illegals up in that area, and there's a group of illegals that they had, basically grabbed up about 3 or 4 days ago. And, these are the allegations of raping some of these children up there. So this is brutal, and this is a war zone. And in a war zone, and this is what I mean about this sort of disaster zone, it's like a war zone. You showed many of the pictures, Benny. So when you have a war zone like that, you're going to have all sorts of nefarious characters, actors. You're going to have people up there with all kinds of, hey, if you support me, if you support this, and they're going to be benefiting from it. We got to be very, very careful about who we're supporting, where your money's going, and the type of people that are up in this area, because you're going to have, it's such a gigantic area of operations. The only way right now for a legitimate, well done, well executed recovery operation to take place is if the United States government commits at least a brigade-sized task force, which is about 7,000 to 8,000, men and women, soldiers with all of the requisite capabilities to get in there. Now, this is even outside the scope of the National Guard. It's such a big, big problem. And that doesn't mean that doesn't take any away from the National Guard leadership. They can get a general up there who's got some guts and is ready to make some decisions. But the scale and scope of this problem, like I said, we're talking about so many counties in North Carolina, but we're looking at a much, much bigger problem. And so the larger the problem, the bigger the resources that you're going to require. And those resources, because we're talking about interstate problems here, it has to come from the federal government. And for the federal government to say we're out of money is total bullshit. It's total bullshit. Excuse my Irish, Benny, to your audience. There are funds that are available. The President of the United States can redirect them. Speaker Johnson needs to stand up right now. And also he's got the authority to move monies from one account to another in order to support this operation. And then our Congress, our House, they should be so public right now in the public domain, demanding that the President of the United States help these people. Benny, we're going to have over 2,000 Americans dead from a hurricane that was never expected to go up into the western hills of North Carolina. And I said that, the people that have died and will be recovered, bodies from northern Florida all the way up to the hills of western or eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina. Benny, there are entire segments of I-40, and I've seen the videos and the pictures. I-40, which is a major federal highway that cuts right through, the entire mountainside came down, right? So there's an entire section. They're talking about well over a year to repair that. I mean, this is something that is so big. Kamala can take her $750 and put it where the sun doesn't shine, because right now of a much more massive relief effort. And frankly, I hate to say this because it sounds like I'm crazy, but abutting this up to the most consequential election in our history that we are about to experience, it just smells bad. It tastes bad. It's the old thing. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? And we got a problem right now, Benny. And this government is intentionally, doing nothing. They're doing nothing. So don't let anybody say that there's no money, and don't let anybody say that there's no resources. There are both, and they can be there in a moment's notice. We're already 8 days too late. And for the 82nd Airborne Division and 18th Airborne Corps at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, I guess now called Fort Liberty, for those resources to sit there, what? Are they waiting to go to the Ukraine? Are they waiting to go to the Middle East? Bullshit. We have got to get these resources, because that division, I can tell you, I've spent almost half of my career at that, in fact, more than half of my career at that base, wow. in the world of special operations, in the world of really high-end capabilities. I mean, tonnage, clothing, food, logistics, bridging, trucks, air mobility. They have they have more than a brigade's worth of aviation assets. They have a totality of command and control capabilities. Just an ability to go up on, and I know some of the area up there, like there's some fairground areas, and then you have some off-site airfields where there's large open space where the space can be cleared immediately, just bulldoze. Because even the Army at Fort Bragg has bulldozers, has cranes, has all this complement of capabilities. All of that can be brought to bear. You clear up a couple of spaces, you start flying around there, you actually run it like we ran operations in any war zone in the country, because that's what this is. In fact, it's worse than a war zone. You've seen the pictures, you've shown the videos on your screen. We need to get up there with military resources, and we need to do it now. And I mean now. And I'm thankful to actually, because I think Ron DeSantis sent some bridging assets up there from the National Guard and from the State Guard, but certainly from the National Guard. Other governors need to start coming together, folks, because if Joe Biden, he is not there, okay? Joe Biden needs to be 25th Amendmented out. Kamala Harris, who has no concept of what I just said in the last 15 or 20 minutes, zero concept. But there are people in our government, and there's certainly people in the Department of Defense. Lloyd Austin should be ashamed of himself. As a Secretary of Defense, he knows full well what the U.S. military is very capable of doing, all complements, whether it's National Guard, whether it's our reserve forces, or whether it's our active duty. And right now, to put an active duty unit in there for, let's just say, 30 days, and then you can bring in, some of the other search and rescue, some of the other civilian capacity that we have in this country, right? So we know that there's people, and we'll get this. I'll get this information to you so you can put it out on your show, because there is a church up there that is setting up operations. It's a great church, great pastor. There's another couple of groups up there that I know that are bringing in truckloads of food and shelter and warm clothes. I mean, money, yes, will help pay for the fuel services. I know one of the guys that's up there, they brought 6 helicopters up, private. These are private guys who went up there. They normally get a phone call from FEMA. FEMA never called them. These guys are the top end search and rescue people, and FEMA calls them whenever there's a disaster. FEMA never called them. And so they're up there on their own because they just give a shit about what's going on. So they have about 6 helicopters, and they need to pay for fuel. The folks providing the fuel up there have given them fuel at half price, which is really, really nice. But that fuel will eventually run out. So we need to get, we need to pay to get fuel up there. If we continue down this path with trying to do this, by private citizens, and I'll shut up here in a second, Benny. It kind of harkens back to the retreat from Afghanistan, when we pulled out of Afghanistan, and the tragic loss of the beautiful 13 lives, so many others that were wounded, the leaving behind of American citizens, the government pulled out. And so what happened? I mean, there's still Americans back there, right? And so private citizens stepped up, and they started to conduct rescue operations in the most difficult part of the world. Now we're talking about right here in our own front yard. This isn't our backyard. This is our front yard, America. And we have the full capabilities, assets, resources, funding, all of it. And you know what? That's our money. Don't let anybody say, well, the government doesn't have any money. Bullshit. There is so much money that we can come get access to, and they can reallocate this. We're in a new fiscal year. I mean, these are things that I understand, and God help these people. If from my perspective, I ain't speaking for Trump, but from my perspective, God help these people if we get back into office, because this is insane. We can't have close to 2,000, and it's going to go north of 2,000 when we see it all, and the billions and billions and billions of dollars that are going to be just destroyed, and people's lives. I mean, everything. So sad. And we got to look back at these kinds of things and go, what do we do? Why? And I know why. I think there's an intentionality behind this. And I would love Joe Biden. He didn't even know that there's a storm. He didn't know which storm. I heard you ask Nick about, you said, what storm? He was like, which storm you're talking about? Are you shitting me? And I'm getting Irish on here. I want to calm my voice a little bit because we have American citizens that are at risk, that have died, that have lost every single thing that they own. We have the full ability in this country to take care of them right now for an immediate period of time. And I'm talking about probably for the next, certainly 90 days, maybe longer. We can put them, up like we put illegals up, right, in hotels. I mean, we can bring them into, I know, these are all things that I know we are capable of doing. And the military can get in there immediately and start to put people in at least tents on a fairground, and line it up like we've always done in places like overseas combat zones, where we get in there with CBs and we build plywood homes. We can bring in complements of trailers. So much can be done, and our government is on its rear end doing nothing, hoping what they're hoping for? They're hoping that it affects the election and the outcome of election, particularly in places like Georgia, like North Carolina, are affected so much. But I can't imagine, Nick highlighted it, trying to get people to be able to vote, right? That's the last thing that is on my mind for these people. I want Donald Trump to get back into office. Donald Trump has to have, an entire battalion of infantry around him to protect him from being killed by, frankly, some of it might be Iranians. Some of it's probably people in our own damn government working with Mexican cartels and working with other criminal elements to kill this man. So that's another discussion for another day. I know you wanted to talk about something that Jack Posobiec had posted, and I think Jack's right about that there's other plots afoot. And this is insane where we are as a nation, never mind what Mother Nature and our government, what Mother Nature did and what our government has failed to do. So I want people to, I will get to you places where people can give that I totally have vetted, totally trust. And frankly, yes, the organizations that are helping, they need the money, but the people need shelter. They need thermal sleeping bags. They need little until our government kicks in, until something kicks in. They need tonnage. They need clothing, warm clothing. They need preserved foods, right? Canned goods. All the kinds of things. So we're going to be up there in North Carolina here, in Selma here with a whole bunch of people. We've turned our entire Reawaken America event that we planned, months ago, into basically a humanitarian assistance relief effort. So we're going to be doing that, and then we're going to be in Charlotte, helping out Donald Trump with a big event. We're going to turn that into a humanitarian assistance relief effort. And personally, one of the things that I do very well, and for your audience, is I connect people and I connect organizations, because I have a great network of really wonderful people. They're mostly former military, and these are hardworking, patriots, and they love. They know what a crisis. They know how to handle a crisis. So we're connecting different groups that I knew that were doing individual things. We have to be far more coordinated. So anytime that you see somebody, because you'll be talking to different organizations, Benny, the main thing that we need to do is we need to connect those guys. So I probably on the phone this morning have connected about 4 or 5 different organizations, people that didn't generally know each other, but they're all focused on the same, focal point. And that focal point right now is to get relief efforts up into North Carolina. So we've got trucks going up. We've got helicopters going in. We do have some funding coming in, kicking in, particularly for fuel. Because the other thing is, like, you need heaters, right? We need heaters. Heaters run on gas, propane, or they run on just MoGas. So those are the kinds of things. There's the corporate world of Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart. I mean, all of these big box stores, right? I mean, if you're listening to this show, please, please, please kick in. Help those folks that are sitting on an airfield right now running. I mean, as of yesterday, a private organization was running air operations for the entire area because the government wasn't there. Okay, the government wasn't there, and I will put a plug in for Mark Robinson again, because I don't know if he listens to this show, but Mark, on one phone call, up at the Capitol in North Carolina, he immediately that afternoon was at the Hickory Airfield, and he got those forestry helicopters mobilized, and they're now flying rescue missions alongside this private organization, and which is nuts. We should have an entire division, an infantry division, mobilized for this effort, whether it comes out of the Guard or whether it comes out of a place like Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That's what we need right now, and they can set up everything, and that can be the focal point without any of the BS. You tell a 2-star general who's in charge of it, you say, you have the con, you make the decisions, get stuff done, make it happen, rescue people, help people. If you need more stuff, you come back and you ask me, and I'll bring to bear more stuff if you need it. But right now, we got to get those kinds of resources and capabilities out there. So, I mean, I've gone on and on. I'm just, your audience, you can hear it in my voice, folks. We have got to take this country back, because if we don't take this country back, what we're seeing right now in the responsiveness of our government, we're going to see it in spades. And I mean, if there was ever a time for them to shine, now's the time to shine. And these people have dark souls, and that's what we're seeing. So I'll shut up. Thank you, Benny.
This is exactly why you bring the general on your show, to get the orders from a military mastermind and from somebody who truly understands these systems. Now, General, I can't help but look through some of the archives of what happened in Katrina, what happened with Hurricane Sandy when it struck New York, and when these hurricanes hit dark blue cities and large Democrat voting pockets. Let's say this hurricane had hit Philadelphia or Pittsburgh this election. Yeah. I can't help but wonder if the National Guard, the full fleet of the American military, would have been immediately dispatched along with every conceivable federal printing press to print unlimited money to help these people out. You can go back and see the 82nd Airborne deployed to Katrina. Exactly. You can go back and see the military deployed to New Jersey and New York when dark blue cities were hit by hurricanes. Yep. And so you have to step back and say, you know what? It sure as hell looks like this is some sort of political vengeance, political cleansing of Trump counties in swing states. That's what it looks like prima facie.
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, Katrina, we deployed Katrina, which happened down in New Orleans, and then and I just lost the name of the hurricane that hit Homestead Air Force Base in Florida, which was one of the worst disasters. It was a hurricane that hit. The 82nd Airborne was actually deployed down to Florida to do disaster and recovery and relief operations in Florida. And I'm not a big fan of Rumsfeld, and I said this the other day in a post that I put out because I wanted people to understand exactly what you're asking. You know, Rumsfeld, after Katrina, there was 75,000 soldiers that were deployed to New Orleans, right? To 75,000 immediately. He said, well, and this is a quote from a guy that was in the room with him that said, we'll worry about the paperwork later, get them deployed immediately. 75,000 were deployed, like literally in a period of about 4 days, you know, to get them down there, right? And so, and believe me, I'm no fan of Rumsfeld, but when stuff needs to happen in this country, if we have leaders who care, you know, and are willing to do the right thing, then we'll have responses like that where, like I just said, the hurricane that hit Florida, I think it was back in the early 90s, if I remember, 92, and forgive me for the name, but that they deployed the 82nd Airborne Division down there. They ended up sending about a battalion task force, which is about a complement of about, 1,000 to 1,500, in addition to the National Guard that was deployed by Florida at the time. So I think the numbers that we're seeing right now of National Guard that are there, and I think they said 1,000 were deploying out of Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty, to go up into the hills of North Carolina. That's nothing. It's nothing compared to the scale and scope of what we're seeing. And we're already, like I said, we're 8 days too late. So I can't imagine what goes through the mind of somebody. I mean, I'm not an evil person, so I don't know what goes through the mind of an evil person. So I just leave it at that.
So if President Trump comes back to office, and I know we're tight on time here, General. If President Trump gets back to, I want to give people hope, because it's been a dark show. I want to give people hope and show the difference between America Last, which is what you were seeing at play here, and America First. And if Trump comes back into office, you have a position. You said wave a magic wand, but we can wave a magic wand. We can just elect the man back into office.
Yeah.
How do disasters like this get treated differently? Because there will be further disasters. I mean, this is just a fact of life.
Right.
What does America First policies look like in the future?
Yeah, I want people in your audience, I want your audience to think of their own home, right? Your own home. America is our home, and we must take care of our home first. If we're strong, if we are viable, if we feel like if you feel safe in your home, you feel protected in your home, you feel like in your community that your home is in, if somebody is going to respond in time of need, in an emergency, you dial 911 when you're at your home, and hopefully the cops are able to show up. Hopefully they haven't been, given DEI training. And so that's what I want Americans to feel like. In our home, we are safe, secure, protected. We have people that are thinking about us, because they can't do anything without us. I mean, we always say the government's money. No, that's our money. Everything that happens in this country belongs to us. So this is our home. That's what America First means. It means that we are going to protect our home. We're going to do everything that we can to make sure that whether it's a disaster or whether it's the fentanyl drug problem, whether it's the illegals that we've got in this country, or whether it's a threat from overseas against our home, right? You got criminals that break into your house sometimes. We don't want that to happen. So we need to protect our country. That's what America First is about, just like it's our own damn home, because folks, it is, and we're paying for it. And then we can start to worry, because we can juggle, we have enough smart people to juggle multiple balls, so we can, worry about what's happening in Eastern Europe. We can worry about what's happening in the Middle East, and we can look at our foreign policy, which is a disaster right now, and start to, rein that in a little bit, like catching a fish, right? We got to rein some of this madness back in. We have good people that can do that kind of stuff, but we have to first make ourselves stronger. And one of the ways that we make ourselves stronger, and Trump has been all over this, energy, and I'll just talk about energy for a second, because it's like your own home, right? If there's a disaster, I mean, you buy a couple of extra cans of propane tanks so you can, make yourself a cup of coffee during a or some food or whatever, or you buy something to take care of your home. We have energy in abundance in this country to take care of the rest of the world, frankly. I mean, we have so much energy in this country, and what that energy resource does, and I ain't just talking about fossil fuels or petro or nuclear, talk about all forms of energy. We have that right now. And if we put that into high gear, which was one of Trump's major issues, we can turn this country, we can turn the lights back on in America and be that shiny city on the hill that we know we can still be, but we got to have the right leaders. We got to have the right focus. And that's one big area that will immediately kick in. And once that kicks in, the second, third, fourth, fifth order effects of opening up the energy resources that this country has, it will start to grow and have an effect on all kinds of other industries for our country. And we need to get back into being a manufacturing stronghold in the United States, from the United States of America to the rest of the world. We can still do that, but we got to have the right leadership in the White House. And right now, we have no leadership.
General, thank you so much for your time. My team is telling me that we are at time, that you've got another hit. I know you're a busy guy. Please, everyone, follow General Flynn here. Obviously, you probably already are. 1.7 million followers. Make sure that our movement grows. God bless you, General. We can't wait for you to be back in command. Great.
I'll send you some places, Benny, that you can give your folks, some ideas about how to help, because I know your audience is a great audience. Thank you. God bless. See ya. God bless you.